Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that if you're returning. How you doing today? Before we get started, if you haven't signed up for our newsletter yet, please do so. All of the information to get a hold of me and Trish is always in the description box below, along with all the important information we always want you guys to have, along with some really cool links to get some really awesome items. So before we get started, please grab your coffee. I have an extra large cup today and maybe some chocolate because you just never know with me or what's going on in the world today, okay? So, a subscriber sent me an email today and I'm not going to reveal her identity because, like I always say, I value your privacy, okay? She said, I received an email from my credit card company, which is Chase. I always pay my credit card balance every single month. I monitor my report regularly, which we should all be doing, by the way. Okay, I know I do. I'm hoping that you guys do too. In the picture below, you can see, now get this, that the government checked my credit. I do not have a small business and simply pay my bills through my credit card. I have no idea why the government would check my credit. If you hear this from others, please let me know. So, if you've checked your credit recently, or even in the past, or you haven't at all, please start to do this, okay? And let me know if you see anything that says new activity, government. Because on October 15th of this year, it says new inquiry, USSM Business Admin ODA. An inquiry is a record of someone checking your credit information. This usually happens when you apply for a new line of credit. But she hasn't. Government. Keep an eye on things, okay? Because this is very concerning. I always keep an eye on my credit, my husband's credit, and Andrew keeps an eye on his credit. We don't go through Credit Karma or anything like that. Go directly through like Equifax, okay? Things like that. So, because, you know, these are just things that you really, really, really have to just keep an eye on. You just never know who's watching. So, another subscriber sent me an email, okay, with pictures attached. And this has to do with the shortages and what's going on around our country, okay? She said, I went to my local BJ's warehouse, which is similar to Costco and Sam's Club. They had no toilet paper, very few paper towels, a box of paper towels like a restaurant would have. They had limited tissues and napkins too. They even had had bottled water where the toilet paper and paper towels usually are. A lot of the shelves in the upper racks were empty too. They had chicken thighs, legs for $1.09 a pound, but the chicken breasts were up to $2.99 a pound from the $1.99 a pound, which they normally were. The beef prices were higher too. I noticed the Tylenol items were really expensive. They had a bottle of Tylenol, 500 count, for $19.29. That is really expensive. Wow. I'm pretty sure it was under 12 the last time I checked. BJ's brand Tylenol, same amount of pills, was $6.99. So I'll put those pictures in right now. Now, these pictures that I'm going to be putting in are from a subscriber in the UK. The supermarket is called the Cooperative in Harpenden, and it's Harpenden in the county of Hertfordshire, and that's Hertfordshire. Okay, now these are just wow. You want to talk about shortages and putting things in place of things that do not belong? Holy cow. So, she said the egg shelves were under half full. There were no 4-pint cartons of milk, so I had to buy 2 of the 2-pint cartons. She said there's absolutely no semi-skimmed milk. All the 2-pint cartons are gone. The egg section had taken a beating too, as there were no more eggs on the shelf yesterday evening when I was there. Big gaps in the toilet paper section. The 3 refrigerators that had bottles of HP brown sauce and Heinz salad cream have now been adjusted. So where the eggs and the milk would be, they put Heinz salad cream and HP brown sauce. That's, wow. Sorry about that. That was my mom. Tomorrow is her birthday. My hero. I love you, Mom. So the pictures that she put in here, I will put in right now for you. So then this email was also sent to me. Okay. She said, first of all, I love your channel. Well, thank you. I love you too. This morning, the husband and I went to our local Dollar General just to pick up a few things. We live in South Louisiana, where Ida hit, but things have been operational in many areas, and we're slowly getting back to normal. This is why I was so shocked to see the frozen food coolers completely empty this morning. So I took pictures after standing there with my mouth open for a few seconds in disbelief. I thought to myself, well, maybe they're having freezer issues and they had to pull all the food out. When I went to the checkout, I asked the cashier what happened to all the food. She said they just hadn't gotten a truck in and they're still waiting. People need to wake up. This is happening. Feel free to share these pics. So I will. I'll put those in right now. So now I want to read to you something that was written by George H. Walter, okay? And it's called Government Food Reserves, okay? In nearly every major disaster, the federal government uses its food reserves to assist local disaster organizations in emergency feeding of disaster victims and workers. A major share of the foods used for emergency feeding comes from stocks supplied by U.S. Department of Agriculture. Plans in case of war likewise assume that food supplied by the Agriculture Department would be used to meet a part of the emergency needs. An example of emergency use of government food reserves was Hurricane Betsy in September of 1965. About 4.9 million pounds of department-supplied food was used to feed over 318,000 people at temporary shelters in 105 schools and public buildings. This was supplemented with food supplies provided by the military, by the Red Cross, and others. One advantage of having government-owned food reserves is the speed of which they can be made available to meet disaster requirements. The idea of food reserves is not new. The Bible refers to Joseph building up food reserves in the years of plenty to supply the Egyptians and their friends in a period of famine which followed. In our country, when the late Henry A. Wallace was Secretary of Agriculture, he developed a concept of the ever-normal granary, which is the basis of our present price support programs for support and other agricultural products. Reserves built up during the late 1930s provided a valuable stock of food to provide aid to our friends and allies during World War II. The value of government food reserves to assist needy people has received increasingly greater recognition in recent years. The first executive order issued by President Kennedy was to augment the distribution of government-owned foods to needy people in this country. The Food for Peace program was designed to use our food abundance for assistance to needy people in other parts of the world. In times of war, government food supplies have been used to feed our own armed forces and the armed forces of our allies, as well as to supplement food supplies in war-damaged and occupied areas. Food is vital both from the humanitarian standpoint and to help maintain health and order in occupied areas. Following major wars, food has been a major item in aid and assistance programs. When we have had government food reserves, these have been used, reducing pressures on the already expanded economy. If no government food reserves are available, unusual demands require special production programs to get the needed commodities. It has proved difficult to readjust food production downward once these war-generated demands have been met. Many people have the impression that the federal government owns huge stocks of food of all types, but compared to commercial food stocks, government-owned foods are relatively limited, both in terms of quantity and of variety. The term government food reserves, as used in this article, includes the following types of foods owned by the federal government. 1. Foods procured specifically for use in public institutions and welfare programs. 2. Civil defense shelter stocks. And 3. Inventories acquired as a result of price support operations in the Agriculture Department. Food for use in public institutions and welfare programs include that purchased for the school lunch program, food supplies of the military and other government agencies for those own use, and food for distribution up to needy people. Food for schools and welfare distribution is provided by the Agriculture Department to state agencies for distribution. Over 2 billion pounds are distributed annually. At any one time, inventories in the hands of the distribution agency, the schools, or in the department's warehouses and in transit probably average at least 2 or 3 months' supply for the purpose that it was intended. Food stocks owned by the military, by the Veterans Administration, and other federal agencies are for their own use. Only limited amounts can be diverted from these stocks for other uses. Efforts are made to hold inventories to the minimum needed. Civil defense shelter supplies include about 318 million pounds of biscuits or crackers, plus a small quantity of carbohydrate supplements. These stocks are packaged in cans to provide a long shelf life and protection from contamination. Thus, they are intended only as a survival ration and are not available for other purposes. Inventory of foods acquired as a result of the Agriculture Department price support operations vary widely depending upon the season and upon crop conditions. In September of 1965, they included over 70 million pounds of butter, around 3 million pounds of cheese, some 200 million pounds of dry milk, and nearly 3 million pounds of dry beans. over 3 million pounds of peanuts and peanut butter, and 1.8 million pounds of honey. Supplies of grain include about 500 million bushels of wheat and 1 billion bushels of feed grain.
Front open.
So this goes back to, remember the video that I did the other day of the trucker who's also an EMT who brought a truckload of dried beans to that military base that hardly has any personnel. Okay. So while these government food reserves seem large in terms of total pounds, they represent only a few pounds per person. Except for grains, they are also relatively small when compared with commercial food stocks maintained by food processors and by distributors. But even government and commercial stocks combined cannot be considered a substitute for continued new production and the distribution of food from the farm through the normal commercial channels to the ultimate consumer. Wow, there is a lot of information here. So what I'm going to do, okay, is I'm going to read a little bit more, but then I'm going to leave the link, okay, in the description box below so you guys can read this entire thing, okay? So a major part of food made available by the Department of Agriculture to schools and needy families is acquired as a result of price support and through removal of surplusage from the marketplace. Quantities may vary markedly within the year. These stocks consist only of foods in surplus supply, since by law, price support stocks must be sold whenever a buyer offers the support price plus certain carrying charges. Food available as a result of price support programs usually include wheat, corn, and other grains in unprocessed form, which are often kept in storage in the production areas. This food can be processed into cereals and flour or other forms usable in an emergency, but it takes time, and in disasters, the immediate need is obviously for a ready-to-use food. Therefore, these grains serve primarily as backup reserves to assure adequate food for a considerable period after an emergency. Now, following natural disasters like floods, government stocks of feed grains are sometimes made available to farmers at reduced prices or donated to keep livestock alive until local feed supplies are again available. Now, some foods acquired as a result of price support operations are in a form readily available and suitable for immediate use in case of a disaster. They include butter, dry milk, cheese, and dried beans. These items can quickly be shipped to the disaster areas, either for use in group feeding operations for distribution to families. Generally, there are quantities of some or all of these foods in the pipelines en route to or in schools or welfare distribution centers. Immediate disaster needs are usually met from the nearest source, with the Agriculture Department arranging for resupply from more distant points. Another immediate source of foods for disaster use is Commodity Credit Corporation, or CCC, price support stocks, which have been processed into forms ready for school use or distribution to needy families. Examples are wheat, flour, and other cereal products, peanut butter, milled rice, and vegetable oil products. Processing contracts provide for most of these items to be shipped directly by the processor to a state-operated warehouse from which they move to the school or welfare distribution center. Usually, however, supplies en route from the processor can be reconsigned to the emergency or disaster feeding needs. In other cases, the supplies are borrowed from already donated stocks with the promise to replace them subsequently. In the case of a disaster, the Agriculture Department also makes available foods it purchases for other purposes. So there's a lot more to read here. So like I said, I will leave the link in the description box below. Okay, so you guys can read the rest because I don't like to make my videos too long. Okay, so I love you guys. I'll see you in the next one. You stay safe. You stay positive. You keep prepping. And as always,